talking about flicking the switch. And sometimes, although we have the switch handy, you can flick it, press it, nothing happens. And you wonder why. This is a situation where you're trying to find your mojo, you want to switch from one mood to another, you want to go from your daily work to a more creative moment or enjoyable moment, and you say, okay, you've learned your lesson about flicking the switch and you want to enter this other mode, and no juice, right? This happens, okay? So the flick is not something that you need to take for granted. The switch is something that needs to be maintained as well, right? And cultivated. So today I want to talk about that, right? And how you can observe and reflect and maybe learn some mechanisms to make sure that the moment you will need your flick the switch, it will be there and it will be responsive, right? And I want to give you maybe 3 directions to explore that you can take as do's or don't do, right? And I'm going to start maybe with an obvious one, but I have to, if for the sake of comprehensiveness and relevance, right? So probably the first advice ahead of using your switch and ahead of any moment you will need it will be to make sure that, when you get a chance in your life, you need to get outside of your comfort zone, right? If you always walk the same path in your life, the trodden path, and if you always join and participate to the same echo chambers, would that be on social media or on your real life social circles, of course, you will never be challenged, right? And you will rehash the same old behaviors, ideas, opinions, stimulations, questioning and avenues, and all the same responses are going to come back to you, right? So you have to think about that, and every now and then when you get a chance, get yourself out of the comfort zone. And that could be on a weekend, one of your friends offers you to go on an errand or on a weekend destination vacation that you would never usually pick by yourself. The first reaction would be for you to say, oh, I'm comfortable with that, and I'm going to kindly say no, right? Could be, for instance, you're invited to go on the boat sailing, and you're not a great swimmer, and you prefer to go on a hike in the bush. But maybe it's a missed opportunity, right? To get out of your comfort zone and maybe to spend a day that is going to really open up different chakras, right? And maybe you're going to meet very different people, and maybe you're going to discover what is going to be your next hobby and your next passion. You never know, right? You will never know until you give it a chance, right? And this chance is called getting out of the comfort zone, accepting and giving a positive response to this prompt coming from the outside of someone or something telling you, giving you a chance to do something different, right? So that's very powerful, obviously, and I would really encourage to look at not only on the weekend, but even in terms of your, the emails you're receiving or the social you're seeing. Social networks are very tricky. Is of course the algorithms of Google, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok are designed precisely to show you what you are most likely to enjoy, right? So it's not meant at all to get you out of the comfort zone. So forget about that, right? If you're expecting that your online life is going to become an inspiring one, well, not necessarily. It's just going to keep feeding you with the things you already know, you already like. I'm trying to find the right piece of sun and shade. There you go. The sun is moving. And so very unlikely that your online, digital, social life is going to do that, right? So it's going to be more in the space of real life, in the streets, at work, in your family, or in your direct circle of friends or indirect friends, that you need to keep your mind open to new opportunities and get yourself out of the comfort zone, right? So the reason I'm saying that is that, again, this is going to put in your brain and in your memory bank new emotions, new situations, and you never know. Whatever is your avenue, if you're a digital artist, a musician, a painter, a photographer, a writer, anything in the creative space. So really you want to put in your brain new information, new material that are going to become the substrate and the bricks for your reflection, whether that be philosophical, intellectual, creative, whatever it is. Right? I would argue that even to solve a work problem or what sort of complex problem you have handy, and you keep flipping around this problem and this situation, and you don't using your traditional material, you don't find the right angle to crack it. It's like a bowling ball. Your fingers are looking for the holes in the ball, and you keep fumbling around until the moment you can put your fingers in this bowling ball and grab it and have a good go at a strike, right? So it's really the same thing. Sometimes you struggle and you just need to put yourself in a different mindset and different condition to create more opportunities. Okay, so first advice, get yourself out of the comfort zone. This is going to massively support your mojo and your inspiration, because that's what we're talking about, right? Okay, that was the obvious one, right? Now we want to move on to things which are probably less natural, right? Less intuitive. Okay. Second advice, to make sure that your mojo is there when you need it and you can flick the switch and be inspired, is don't overstimulate it. Don't be a thrill seeker in your life. Sometimes your mojo is connected to something that can become very addictive, right? So, you would be always trying to chase and to recreate the conditions in which you feel good and you think you're going to get inspired and produce some ideas and all that, right? That's not the case. Actually, if anything, if you're a thrill seeker in your life, if you want to, stimulate your mojo too often and all the time, it's like beating a dead horse, right? At some point, either it's going to go flat completely, and you may have some form of burnout even and some depression that ensues, which is clearly not the right thing to do. Or to the contrary, you might go into a sort of escalation, right? An arms race, and you always look at the next level of stimulation, thinking that if you keep stimulating yourself more, your mojo will come back, right? And or will be more intense and of greater quality, okay? That's not right. Again, as I said, and that could lead to a form of addiction, whatever it is. You could think you find your mojo in, having this glass of alcohol that gets you inebriated, and you think that's lifting some inhibitions that allow you to become creative. Well, the reality is that the more you drink, the more numb you're going to get, and eventually the more addicted you're going to get, right? To this not just Friday drink, but it's going to become an everyday drink. You come at home and you have this glass of wine or whiskey, worse, and then your mojo will never turn up. Right? You think you're going to start feeling good and numb, but actually you're not going to become creative. Same thing with drugs, any sorts. Would that be marijuana? Would that be cocaine? Right? If anything, again, with these kind of drugs, which are you can get really hooked on, it's just going to encourage you to consume more and more and more. Right? So, wrong idea. Same thing with partying, or I even know people who are going into debauchery. A sort of pushing the limits of their experiments with life. Sex addictions are a reality, and people think that that gives them this endorphin and this adrenaline that is making them more creative when they come back in front of the computer or the piece of the white paper sheet or the frame sitting on the on the table ready for to be brushed. Now, right, again, this all addictive kind of thing is not working. You will realize that sooner or later, and if anything, as I said, you're going to beat a dead horse and you're going to end up super flat, right? So don't do that at all. That's not the way inspiration and mojo work. Okay, that's point number 2. Beware the shiny glitters of all these forms of behaviors, right? Being a thrill seeker in your life is not going to resolve anything. Which brings me to maybe the third advice, and again, this is probably the most counterintuitive you're going to hear, right, from today, probably, is that at the other end of the spectrum, right? If you want to make sure that the moment you need it, your Mojo switch is going to be actionable and spark, right? You need to try to lead a life with more routines. You need to lead a life where you're going to constrain your inspiration, right? And make sure that you leave it as little space as possible. I know it's counterintuitive, right? But it's the reality, at least in my experience. And I want to try to explain why, right? So, in, inserting routines in your life is going to put you in a mode where you're going to be more, regimented, automated sometimes in your tasks, from the morning to the evening. You're going to have your routines about the way you go to work, the way you exercise, the way you feed yourself. Don't forget your meds, meditation, exercise, diet, sleep, the way you go to sleep at a given time, right? Quality of sleep for the mojo and the inspiration turn up, it can't be overstated, right? So you need to take your meds first. And I'll put the reference back to one of the Drive and Thrive podcast I did about that, right? So put routines in your day work, at least during the week, right? Leave little space for this sort of, intellectual or emotional temptation to let your mind go and be creative, right? You will need to wait for quality time or the right moment, at least, right? To try to flick the switch of inspiration and get the spark you're expecting, right? So insert a lot of routine in your life and be ready for the moment where you'll declare free time or me time, right? The time where I'm going to now unleash the horse, right? So the horse is, you hold the reins very tightly, right? All the time, keeping on track, keeping trotting and not running, not racing, right? But then the horse, of course, at some point, right, that the horse would need to be unleashed, right? You will go on the race field, and you're going to remove the rein, and you're going to let the horse go, right, and bolt, and go on his incredible, jumping and prancing and whatever it is. And so think about that as a horse, right, or as a sort of wild animal that you keep constrained for a time, and you let, in a sense, the mojo build up in it. Right? They figure out this ball of energy, of chi, would say the Chinese and the Taoist, right? And you've got a lot of movies about that. I've got this picture of Doctor Strange, for instance, in this movie where he learns how to manipulate this ball of energy and suddenly unleash it. Right? It's a little bit like that. First, you need to have control, regimented routines, regular, standardized practices, and then comes the moment where you declare it, right? Or there will be a spark in your brain at the right moment where you are going to be, wow, amazed by what your brain suddenly is going to be able to be and how you're going to feel, right, about that. Think about artists. There's so many examples in the artistic world. For instance, the best songs ever have been written in minutes, right? It's not about people trying to, as I said, beat a dead horse for days and weeks, and through hard work manage to produce, the lyrics and the melody and the arrangements. Or maybe the arrangement takes some time, right? But the initial idea of the song, the gimmick, the chorus, the title would come in seconds, right? I'll find examples, right? But there's so many examples of the greatest songs from the Beatles, from Bob Dylan, from anyone really, from Led Zeppelin, from whatever is your avenue, or even probably from Mozart, right? Came in minutes, right? Out of a particular state of mind, which is an inspired state of mind. But to be in this state of mind, you need to have built up momentum. You need to have wound up spring. You need to have pulled on the arrow of your bow and be ready to release the arrow, right? Or it's like a crossbow, right? You pull the string with a spring or a spring system, and you get ready to pull the trigger. Then you get an effect, right? So in the artistic world, plenty of examples in songwriting, in painting. It is said that, for instance, Van Gogh was painting continuously, most of his canvases, most of his famous paintings. There is a good example in the movie At the Gates of Eternity, a great movie if you haven't seen it, by the way, where you see Van Gogh coming back from an errand in the Garrigue in the Provence, and he did all these drawings, but he's frustrated, right? And he comes back and he's got his shoes right full of. It's been a rainy, sort of half sunny, half rainy day, and he's got his shoes full of mud, and he throws one of his shoes by the bed, right, in his bedroom in Arles, right, and then he's there sitting on this famous chair that we have all seen on. Hopefully in reality or at least online, and he looks at the shoe, and that's it. Takes the canvas, takes his brushes, and in one go, he paints the shoe right there. Takes a few minutes or maybe an hour, but in one go, he gets it. His mojo is there, right? And although he's been looking for inspirations for days, right? This is at the least expected moment that it strikes and that the spark comes, and it leaves us today with an incredible masterpiece, right? Just done in one go with a few brushes on a blank canvas, as Vincent was coming back from one of his errands in Provence, right? So think about that, right? So how paradoxical it is and how counterintuitive it is, but the more regimented a life you lead, with well-established routines, that doesn't mean you are not going to be creative at some point, right? But that means that you preserve this precious energy for the quality moment where you're going to unleash it, right? You are not going to be a thrill seeker all the time and become jaded and burnt out and completely empty, or what you're going to produce is going to be like American coffee. Sorry, US listeners, but I prefer my espresso rather than all these very diluted American coffee, right? Something really tasteless and very thin, right? No, you want to collect the entire intensity of the inspiration at the right moment, right? And don't forget also that to feed this moment, you will need to make sure that in your day-to-day life, you every now and then you pick the opportunity to get out of your comfort zone, right? And do something completely opposite to what you would do normally. Opposite, like feel like a stranger, like an alien, and say, "Oh wow, you've never skated," and someone invites you at the ice skating roll or the rolling disco. Give it a go. Give it a go. Someone tells you, let's go to Morocco for holidays, and you've got this sort of prejudice towards Northern Africa and all that. Give it a go. There's other destinations than the usual ones, right? Try one that you wouldn't have picked yourself. Okay. I think that's my 3 advices today. Again, to summarize, it's to help you ahead of the moment where you will need to flip the switch. And this switch will be the one of inspiration. If you want to avoid for it to go bust and, stay in the dark, click, 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 nothing happening, right? You need to make sure that you have the right behaviors and daily life balance to make sure that the day you really need it, it will be actionable. I hope it's useful. There will be an article going with this podcast. Of course, this is the switch. We are envisioning all sorts of switches in our life. This one is a particular one, but it's a mindset switch as well, and it's the inspiration mindset, like priming inspiration, almost on demand, right? Or maximizing your chances to be inspired and to get your mojo when you need it. Okay, so this is the switch. Thank you for listening.